Hello, everyone, and welcome to EA Zoom. I'm Robin Grabfelder, and today I'm joined by Tara McGillicuddy, Ryan Evans, Marty Dixon, Eric Meyers, Jordyn Smith, and Sue Hillyard. And today we're going to be discussing the planetary alignments of 2026 and why astrologers see this year as a major fundamental reset for humanity. The outer planetary shifts are signaling the collapse of long-standing collective narratives and the emergence of a completely new archetypal cycle. Our focus today is going to be on how these transits invite clarity, responsibility, and active participation in shaping what is going to come. So Marty is going to bring up some charts, and we're going to start by looking at an eclipse coming in February.
Thank you, Robin. You hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you to Robin Grabfelder and Sue Hillyard. A huge thank you and great respect to both of you for keeping this dialogue going. We couldn't do it without you. We really appreciate your time and your input. And to my colleagues, Jordyn, Tara, Eric, Ryan, Sue, Matthew, and Loretta. You're all a piece of the puzzle. You're all a key to the light, and I cannot esteem you highly enough. I just am so grateful for all these voices because no one person knows all of this, and we so much appreciate all of you and all the work that you do and what you bring forth. And you're also darned agreeable. Just kidding. Okay, so let's start with a share here. And let me know if you can see that.
Yes.
Okay, we have two eclipses coming up in February and March, and the first is a solar eclipse on February 17th. A solar eclipse between with the sun, as you can see, in Aquarius, and the moon in Aquarius, and then we have a total lunar eclipse coming up on March 5th. As you can see, that has the moon in, I've lost my screen, darn. The moon in Virgo and the sun in Pisces. And if anybody wants to comment on these eclipses coming up, one coming up very, very soon in about a month's time in February, starting with the solar eclipse in Aquarius. Anyone? Do you all see the chart?
I'm happy to
Yes.
chime in with a few things. A few things that really stand out to me with these charts is just how closely so many planets are together.
Yeah.
And when I think about basically everybody, just about everybody's chart is being impacted with a spread of generally about two houses. So there's a really marked emphasis of energy. Obviously, that's relative to the individual, but we're all being deeply impacted in specific areas within our individual charts. And that to me is a signature of the eclipse of this, both eclipses, but particularly the solar. Um, and it's also pretty noteworthy to me the anaretic degree points with Saturn and Neptune at 0, and then even the sun and moon are practically in an anaretic degree point. They're so close to that 29 degree point of Aquarius. So, I mean, there's a lot of beginning and ending and turmoil around that crisis point of old cycles and old patterns where I tend to think of, the final degree point where it's like there's something inside of us that's deeply yearning to birth, and yet the crisis of holding on to it perseveratively for dear life. And then, sort of that 0 degree crisis point of rebirth, but it's still very unrefined and unpolished and rough around the edges, and you're kind of trying it on for size. And I know it overlaps with the Venus star point changing, certainly breaking it down, of course, by the individual archetypes and the transits and aspects here, but the signatures that really stand out just visually and archetypally are some of those. Those were some of the first things that really struck me when I was looking at the charts for these eclipses a couple months ago.
Yeah, I thank you, Matthew. Something that stands out to me with the solar eclipse on the 17th is, well, in both of these eclipses, the nodes are stationary. And that's like super emphasized. This is like when we're looking at this collectively, that is like it's one of those exclamation points, right? So the solar eclipse, obviously, these are, we think of new beginnings, and yet we have, the South Node in Virgo, and it really reflects the crisis going on all over the world. If we're looking at this in a collective way, and yet it's been through these crises that we're seeing all over the world, different places coming together in community, and I mean, we see it in a place that I'm thinking of as Madagascar right now. They just had like Gen Zers band together and form a regime in order to, overthrow their government. So there's this Aquarian energy that's already being ignited, and yet this solar eclipse, it is in Aquarius, and it's ruled by Uranus that's now direct in Taurus. And Aquarius can be very abstract, and yet Uranus and Taurus is asking us to ground and maintain something that's sustainable. And so sustainability within the community efforts as a way for Uranus and Taurus, it's ruled by that Venus on the North Node. The ruler of the South Node is on, well, it's separating from the North Node, but it's still there. And so it's about tapping into these more universal, timeless laws. And not to sound woo woo, it's more of that is sustainable. It is the distortions that have played out that are creating the crisis, right? Where we're experiencing groups of people, Aquarius, being pinned against each other, and yet it's also bringing community efforts. Like I said, we see it globally. Through this crisis, this is what's happening. And so it's really asking for us to apply the more timeless values in order for Uranus and Taurus, there to be this sustainability within the community. That doesn't mean that there's like some come to Jesus moment and some type of collective enlightenment that's going to happen. Like, I want to be really honest about that. It just means that there's something new that's being initiated that is wanting the community to come together and to be sustainable. And when I think of Neptune and Aries, especially the last time it was in Aries in 1851, if I remember correctly, around the world we saw different forms of what I would call like spiritual warriors. And to me, that's really just people who are, they're not about war, fighting, or harming. They are about ethics, timeless values, and initiating and having the courage to stand up and to face something in the face of injustice, right? I think of Sojourner Truth. She came in full front during this time, right? And she, to me, is like a spiritual warrior. She stood for these timeless truths. She cut to the message. She had the courage to do it. And so I feel like there is a propensity for us to see some of that. and how that can be inspiring. And yet, during the same time, the last time we had, what was it? Taiping, where there was this ruler who was really delusionary and was connecting, the Messiah was telling him what to do, and it created war, right? And so we can see that both of these functions are going on. And so, really, it's about what are we going to do? Are we going to align with actual truth, or are we going to align with delusions, right? And are we going to come together and understand that there's unity and diversity, or are we going to continue to create division through exclusion? So to me, it's like, as much as, there's something that's being birthed here, but something's being culminated, and yet there's still a fracturing going on, right? And so it's really a call to humanity whenever I think of this solar eclipse. So I could talk for forever about this, and so I'm going to shut up.
That was very good.
Well, I think it's interesting that this is happening 3 days before the eclipse is happening 3 days before Saturn and Neptune can, have their conjunction in Aries on the 20th. So it's just this little glimpse into where we're headed and our need to liberate and innovate. Okay. I feel like Aquarius specifically really can exist on two opposite ends of the spectrum. It really seeks to innovate and looks, it's visionary and looks toward the future, but it also can become very fixed and rigid and stuck on the past. And it believes, what it thinks and what it wants is the right way, rather than, if it gets too stuck in the past, the Saturnian part of Aquarius. But if we're looking at the Uranian part, it's complete innovation and a break from the old way. So we're in this moment of, do we want to stay stuck in the past, or do we want to break free from the traditional ways and the way it's always been? And we have to choose. And then once we have Saturn and Neptune forming their conjunction in Aries, it's going to be a little easier to break into that future-oriented energy, because Aries is very much about the future and what it's trying to create and become and discover about itself.
Will be propelled.
Yeah, propelled.
Yeah, so when I look at these charts, and to build on what others are saying, with the North Node still in Pisces for a while, Neptune, of course, the dispositor of that, and there it is in Aries with Saturn coming up. And so, one of the issues that I see as very relevant here, that I spend a lot of time talking about, is about the individual. Aries really embracing their spiritual power. So often what I think defines the age of Pisces is that the locus of control is beyond us. Here's what the universe has in store for you, is what some astrologers say. Like, we're just passive and we just can tune in to see what will happen, and people make predictions about what will happen. And my view is that everything is up to individual choice. Aries, it's up to each of us. And I do think that part of the spiritual lesson is to take more responsibility, Saturn, for our own spiritual situation, for our own way that we navigate and co-create with these energies, and not really looking externally for the answers, but to understand that astrology, of course, only asks us questions. And so I really see this about spiritual responsibility. And many people don't want to embrace that. It's much easier to look outside and be an observer or passive. But to me, this is a call for that spiritual warriorship, and understand that, your sense of the world, your sense of divinity is being projected out, and we're more or less all interacting with our own version of reality. So to take more responsibility in creating that is what I think a lot of what this astrology is about.
Yeah, I think that Saturn is gonna and Neptune together also are gonna make people become more aware of where they have been disillusioned, or you know, be aware that they've been disillusioned and come face to face with that. And like you said, then start looking and realizing that they are more responsible and have more control than they've been led to believe.
Mm, yeah. Everything's wrong. Everything's broken. The world's a mess. And from one point of view, that is true. Everything is wrong. Everything's broken. Everything's a mess. Just look at the news headlines. Virgo. Everything's wrong. Everything's broken. Everything's a mess. But contained within the Virgo archetype is also the wisdom, the knowledge, the experience, and the chutzpah that it takes to make it right. So Virgo, the fixer. So we want to fix everything. Everything's broken. How do we fix it? I don't know how we fix it. I can't fix it. And then we get the shame and the guilt, and I can't do it, and I'm not good enough side of Virgo, which we have to be very mindful of collectively. But yes, it's true. Everything is wrong. Everything is broken. Everything is a mess. And concurrently, that there is something within us, our experience, our mastery, our having collectively been on this planet through a lot of things that are similar to what's happening right now, where we're saying everything's broken, everything's a mess. So we have contained within our cellular structure the wisdom that it takes to help make everything right. Well, how do we make everything right? What do we do? I know. Let's put all our energy into this comet that's going to come by our solar system. Yeah, oh yeah, that's going to be the new codes, or there's going to be aliens, and the aliens going to save us, right? No, the aliens aren't going to save us. In fact, nobody's going to save you. And one of the stark, harsh, cold realizations of Aquarius is ain't nobody gonna save me. I have to do this for myself, which can lead to some dark places. But when we start doing it for ourselves, when we start taking responsibility for our own situation and try to, as Goethe said, sweep in front of our own steps, then the whole world would be clean. And we start taking this personal responsibility, then the beautiful part of Aquarius is we take our personal responsibility in Aquarius, and then other people start saying, oh, wow, that person's taking personal responsibility. I want to do that too, or I want to join in. I don't want to be in this stupid football game either. I'm leaving. I just saw Eric get up and leave. I can leave too. All right. So this eclipse, and I like to think of eclipses as new information coming into this realm on a collective level. When there's an eclipse, information can come in, information can leave. We say souls come in and souls leave. So I'd love for this eclipse to be some kind of new patterning, some kind of new information, some kind of new, as Tara was saying, insight, invention, innovation that can help us have a little more clarity as to how to make that which is broken, messy, and gross a little bit mo better. Step one, eclipse. Step two, the conjunction of Saturn and Neptune. Now, this is so incredibly awesome. I'm so excited about this. I can't even tell you. Well, yes, I can tell you. Because what is happening here, I'm a farmer. I see things emerge out of the ground all the time. And I know that if I plant radishes, unless there was a mix up at Johnny's Seeds, if I plant radishes, I'm going to get radishes. Now, I have to plant it in fertile soil. I have to keep it cultivated. I have to keep it watered. But if I plant radishes, chances are I'm going to get them. We have been planting dream seeds with Saturn's transit and Neptune's transit through Pisces. Oh, I know that there's possibility. I know that we're all capable of coming together as one species in unity. And I know that the darkness that we're seeing here is just like what happens when we make ghee and we heat up the butter and all the scum rises to the surface so that it can be more easily removed. Oh yeah, that's what's happening. And when we can frame that perception, we welcome the darkness coming to the surface. It's easier to call darkness so we can move it away, just like we do when we clarify butter. But in order to do that, we need responsibility. We need to be solid. We need to be strong. We need to be upright. We need to do what Eric was saying about the Saturn and Aries thing. And the spiritual warrior part that Eric was saying, we need that Neptune part too. But we've done the Neptune part in Pisces. Oh, this comet is going to save us. Or, oh, this president is going to save us. Ha ha ha, fat chance. You know who's going to save you? You. And Neptune and Aries conjoin Saturn the first time in what, 6,000 plus years. Whoa, I have the ability contained within me to make my dreams, Neptune, real. Saturn. All it takes is Aries, the courage to make that happen. So I like to say that we're at this amazingly beautiful precipice of the next level, next rung in human evolution, where, like Eric was saying, where we become our own spiritual warriors, where we align our own being with whatever we imagine those higher Neptunian places of love and light and connection and unity and all oneness and it's all goodness. That isn't going to come by some comet coming in and saving us. That's going to come from action, Aries. That's going to come from choice, Aries. That's going to come from taking the necessary steps to align whatever it is we dream, Neptune, with the reality of the situation, Saturn. Do the work. Boom, we can make this world less messy. Not going to make it perfect. We can make it less messed up, make it less dirty by maintaining our strength, power, and courage in this realm.
And I want to build upon that for just one quick point. On the lunar eclipse, what we have here with the South Node is the moon in Virgo. And in my view, the moon, regardless of what it's doing, especially with the South Node, is things that are from earlier stages of development that need to be in some way matured or resolved. And in my view, the Virgo moon can be at times discounting oneself. I'm not ready. Somebody else is more qualified. I might as well just be supportive, that kind of ideation. But what we see with this lunar eclipse is Mars making its way to the North Node in Pisces. So Mars on the North Node is really about claiming that power and claiming one's vision. It really does reflect Neptune and Aries to see Mars and Pisces hooked in here. So we see a similar type of invitation for being a lot more confident, Mars, around our own vision, Pisces, rather than feeling responsible to whatever conditioning or training that other people have given, because that might be right for them. But with the Aries, we got to do what's right for us, for the individual. And so, really individuating and operating with more courage and relaxing the need to be so deferential to others is what I think is going on.
For sure.
And adding on that,
I want to. Oh, go. Go ahead, Sue, and then
Yeah,
I'll
just
jump
let
in.
me, I just want to add one little bit, a little snippet, and that is that the solar eclipse is on the moon of the USA Sibley chart, which, and in mundane astrology, the moon is the people. So I think, I think what you all are saying is right on, and and it applies on a kind of a universal.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this kind of continues to validate everything that all of us are seeing. But when you look at both of these eclipses, the north node of Mercury, like in the lunar eclipse, it's conjunct Mercury. Mercury is the ruler of that south node. And I mean the solar eclipse. And the lunar eclipse, the north node of Mercury is conjunct Venus and Mercury. Mercury is still the ruler of that south node and of the moon. To me, this really reflects every problem that we have contains the solution within it. And with Pisces, a lot of times with Virgo, we want to be saved, like Ryan was talking about. Like, I'm just hoping, Pisces, something's going to save me, the aliens, the president, the whoever. And yet, this is really saying, actually, no, there is a lot of new wisdom, Saturn, from the past, South Node, that can be applied. The solution is there, right? The North Node of Mercury, both activated in both of these eclipses. And when I think about the past cycles when things like this were going on, whether it be the Revolutionary War or the Civil War, guess what? It was people coming together. That's why I try to remind people of this every time they're freaking out about what's going on in the world. Like, yes, this is crisis, South Node in Virgo. And guess what? We all have free will. But we have Pluto in Aquarius right now. And when Pluto's been in Aquarius, and also whenever, which we'll get to this, Uranus is in Gemini, there have been times, and it is not just the US, it has been in different places where people came together and they came up with solutions to those problems. They were not depending, they were liberating from the structures, from the confines, from the chains that bound them by the authorities. All right. And so what this actually says, especially with Neptune and Aries ruling all of the Pisces and both of these charts, is, yeah, it's the solution. It's even reflected in the North Node of Mercury, and Mercury hanging out there, the ruler of the South Node. There have been crises, there have been problems, but now it's asking for solution, and it's asking for us to come in and recall and to observe, what did work in the past when things like this happened. There is a collective memory that we are pulling from right now. Just as much as we're sensitive and some of us are really scared because we can feel what's going on and it's terrifying because there's some type of cellular memory. Maybe it's from a past lifetime. Maybe it's just because we're connected with others. To me, it's all of the above, right? But yet there's wisdom and there's solutions within this. And again, I just want to reiterate that when things like what is going on right now have happened in the past, it wasn't the government or the social authorities that saved or helped. It was the people coming together. I think of America right now, and it's like the last checks and balances are the people. And look what's happening. The people. We've seen more. I think they say that it takes 3.5% of the population to make a change when these types of dynamics are going on. And we are rapidly, Aquarius, approaching that percentage of people who are saying no, because they're coming together, and they're coming together in a uh, what is the word I'm looking for? When I think of peacefully protesting or whatever, at first it was, yeah, it was organized. It's not organized anymore. It's just popping up wherever because people are coming together. And so we can already see some of this is being activated. Do I think that there's going to be some kumbaya that's going to happen? Hell no. Like it's just not, it's not reality. You know what I'm saying? But it should be validating because I think whenever we are living through times like this, it is fear and invoking. And Lucifer, the asteroid, it's not on here, but it's hanging out in Virgo too, by the way, this whole time. And it wants us to deny and become apathetic and to feel like there isn't a solution. And yet the North Node in Pisces, ruled by Neptune and Aries, says, hey, actually, how we get out of this is through action, and it's responsible action. It's not us, depending on other people. Uranus and Taurus ruling that Pluto, it's saying, hey, we can be self-sufficient on our own without depending on this. This is the way through. This is the action. But it amounts to free will, free choice, right? Personally and collectively. And so that's what we're seeing. This is that call to action.
I think I agree 100%. Just to piggyback off of that and a few of the other points that were made earlier, I'm thinking about the lessons that the Neptune and Pisces years offered us, certainly emphasized in the last 2.5 years as Saturn was also traversing Pisces. But Neptune in its home sign of Pisces, individually and collectively, it gave us permission to dream. It gave us permission to imagine. It gave us permission to realize that there is something more out there besides sort of the confines of whatever boxes we maybe feel trapped in, whether that's coming from, society or family or culture or, the psyche within ourselves ultimately. And I feel like Neptune really gave us the opportunity to raise our vibration in that way to kind of get out of the box. But part of the challenge of Pisces is also getting lost in such a deep, murky, foggy sea of yearning that's predicated upon an irrational, unachievable idealization. It's always chasing that thing that is so idealized in its kind of emotional, affective, spiritual, creative, romanticized perfection that it's always chasing it, and therein lies an addictive characteristic to Pisces. And I'm thinking about, the initiation with Saturn conjoining Neptune in Aries at the start of the zodiac. And I think about all of the ways that we as humans, we kind of get lost in our story, we get lost in the fantasy, we get lost in the idealization of what we think should be, or what we would like it to be, or our own projection. And sometimes we get so lost in that we never move forward. We never pick one foot up and put it in front of the other. And I think the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Aries brings forth that initiation to be able to say, hey, it's never going to be perfect. It's never going to be ideal. You have to just kind of work with what you have and allow yourself to make change, because if you don't, something is dying. It's the end of the zodiac. The end of the zodiac, something dies. The end of winter, where we give birth to new life in spring. The end of the zodiac, where Pisces just sort of rises up into the ethers, out of the physical. and Eric, I love how you brought up the point about Moon conjuncting the Mercury ruled South Node in Virgo, and that being this part of us within our psyche, within our soul that is not fully rectified, that we're kind of being drawn back to, or that we're maybe even emotionally fixating on. And I think that Pisces Virgo axis, it in a paradoxical way, it can further emphasize there's like that Piscean idealization, but also that Virgoan expectation, like it really has to work out in this very methodically, very detailed means of perfection. And that can play out in what we're trying to achieve in our relationships, in our career, in our financial status, in whatever it is that we're pursuing. And certainly on a collective level, there are the folks who would say, oh gosh, I just wish that we could have a president who would really speak to both sides. Well, guess what? Nobody's going to do that. Nobody's going to do that. The rift is too established. It's too perfunct. We have to really kind of take inventory and say, this is what's in front of us. We have sought an idealized solution until we're blue in the face. There is no idealized solution. So what do we have to do in this moment right now to initiate change? And I think that this ingress from Pisces to Aries is really offering us that opportunity to pick one foot up and put it in front of the other, and certainly to embrace the spiritual warrior. And I think it's also interesting, given that we do still have the North Node in Pisces, we're not done with Piscean lessons. I think we're still being given an opportunity or being called to allow whatever change we make to be fueled by that Piscean divine love, that spiritual divine love. Can we love ourselves as we love another, as we love a vision? Can we recognize that we're not gaining any traction in the storyline, in the narrative that we're carrying? Notice I'm using the term narrative, given that Mercury ruled South Node and Moon with the lunar eclipse, which gets into the narratives and the stories, the fixation on the detail, the perfection. Virgo in perfection with Piscean idealization. None of that is working. It's just kind of stuck in a perpetual loop. We have to sort of release our grip on that and allow ourselves to move forward, to be the spiritual warrior. And I think action is repeated in the charts of both of these eclipses in a number of ways. Certainly, the most obvious being the ingress to Aries at that 0 degree point for Saturn and Neptune. But I think it's also interesting that we've got, this stellium. It's not exactly a conjunct, but of the solar eclipse, we've got Mars that's still within 10, 11 degrees of the sun and moon. And literally within minutes to hours following the exact eclipse, Mars will be very quickly catching up. But I think it's also, so Mars being Aries ruled, or the ruler of Aries rather. And then on the lunar eclipse, where we've got Mars within about 8 degrees of the North Node in Pisces. So I think we are being called to be driven by love, to be driven by compassion, to be driven by spiritual wisdom, to be driven by intuition, yet also responsible for taking action. We have to move forward. And certainly it's a call for humanity with all of that Aquarius Pisces. It's a call for coming together sort of in this, in community. But some of that may not be global community. It may be local community. It may be within our own family or our soul family. How do we take action? How do we mobilize our resources within our own groups, starting at home? And I think that's an important characteristic and signature. And I also want to just throw in before I finish, looking at Jupiter in Cancer, which is trining so beautifully that Piscean energy. So there is an ideal, an ideal, Jupiterian ideal of nurturing. And as a double Cancer here, something I've spent a lot of time on in this lifetime is thinking about one of the quintessential lessons of Cancer. It's not just about doting and nurturing the other, but it's really learning about how to nurture and love oneself. What is going to be authentic for me or for any individual as they begin to take action and make change individually and collectively. There's a big signature here with that Jupiter in Cancer involvement, and it's also retrograde. So it's more internal. What is the most authentic way of taking action that really honors a higher truth and something that is loving and compassionate?
Thank you, Matthew. If I could jump in here really quickly, we'll move on to the next slide of Saturn conjunct Neptune on the 20th. But if you'll look at this real quickly, this is February 17th. And I'm going to back up a little bit and show you the chart just before this one for a specific reason. But before I do that, I just want to say you're all so incredible. When I think it was Jordyn that was talking about coming together, all of you were, and the sun and the moon creating a solar eclipse in Aquarius. And if you look at the world stage today, what's happening in Greenland? Our allies, the people, are coming together and say, it's not for sale. Look at this signature. All you have to do is look at that eclipse in Aquarius. Another thing is, I want to point out, is that the South Node is now in Virgo. I think the nodes switch in July. We'll get to that. Okay. But it's in Virgo, and it's going to be a moon in Virgo, total lunar eclipse. This is a flashpoint on March 3rd, right here. And what that speaks to me, and like Jordyn said, the nodes are stationary. Stationary makes them much more conscious. We're much more aware of them. They're much more tangible. And so when you have that lunar eclipse, total lunar eclipse, lost my cursor again, in Virgo, that means we need to, each one of us, come up with very powerful, our most powerful innate discernment that's possible. We are living in a sea, we are swimming in a sea of ambiguity right now between legacy media and independent media, call it what you will. And we need to use our own personal discernment, and that comes from within, from the heart, from within. And that is so important that we use that or lose our sanity. You don't know who to trust, who to believe, but that discernment in Virgo is so incredibly important right now. So let's move on to anyone else before we move on to Saturn conjunct Neptune. Okay, and I just want to point out, if you look at this, Saturn conjunct Neptune on the eclipse coming up in February, that's on the 17th. We're going to take you back, and they're both at 0 degrees Aries. We're going to take you back a step to the 16th of February, a post that Robin posted on our site about the Saturn and Neptune's final dance, where they're actually in orbital alignment, visual orbital alignment.
Marty?
Yes.
Can you move a little closer to your mic?
Oh, yeah. Can you hear me now? Sorry about that. So
that's a little better. Yeah.
Okay. Do all of you see my screen with the 106-year goodbye?
Yes.
Okay, this was what Robin posted. And in February, on February 16th, a day before the actual eclipse in Aquarius, it brings one of astronomy's rarest planetary encounters as Saturn and Neptune meet for their third and final true astronomical conjunction until 2132, creating an exceptional celestial farewell a visible astronomical conjunction, visible shortly after sunset in the constellation Pisces. The reason I'm showing you this is because there's astronomy behind astrology. And what we talk about and look about planets being conjunct, there's actually a physical visible conjunction prior to the 17th, when we have the eclipse. And there's actually a physical visual conjunction prior to Saturn conjunct Neptune on February 20th, if you get my drift. So this is a bodily conjunction, and it's astronomically observed, and I think it's really important to show this.
Marty, when were Saturn and Neptune previously conjunct? Does anybody know that offhand?
Yeah, it would have been 2025, I think, March, and then August, and now it's going to be February of 2026.
No, I mean, like the last cycle, the last previous
Glad you
time.
asked. I'll show you. Just one moment. See if I have that next. So,
Yeah, 1989 in Capricorn. And
Right.
that correlated with all of those major global changes in 1989 with Tiananmen Square. And then
Berlin
you
Wall
had
fell.
the Berlin Wall,
Yes.
you had Soviet Union doing things. I want to pick up, Matthew, on what you said and talk about this Saturn Neptune because it is actually the tightest aspect of my chart is Saturn opposed Neptune. And I have a real easy way for anyone listening to conceptualize it based on my own experience. Real simple. If you think of Neptune as almost heaven, as some kind of ideal, as Matthew was talking about, and then Saturn about the realities of Earth. And so, one of the major themes of Saturn Neptune is looking around and being like, this isn't heaven on earth. And the disillusionment that we have lost our way. And we come from, consciousness that is theoretically at least pretty enlightened or divine. And yet here we are, fumbling around with so many things that are nonsensical and really not that enlightened. I saw someone post something recently where they said what gets me most is all of the wasted talent. We have so many amazing artists and visionaries, and yet here's what we're talking about every day in the news. And so the challenge of Neptune Saturn in Aries is, okay, that's true, we haven't realized heaven on earth. And then the question is, what are you going to do about it? Aries.
Right.
And that's the question. And, to quote Gandhi, his famous quote, you have to be the change you wish to see kind of idea. It's up to every individual. And too often people just get lost. They outsource it. Somebody else is going to do it. It's bigger than me. And the reality of this conjunction is the only way we're going to have collective change is if each individual spiritually matures. So now's the time to do that and offer your contributions to bring heaven to earth. And if not, then we're going to all feel that sense of disillusionment and disappointment and missed opportunity. And I think that's the vibe out there right now.
Well, yeah, I think the whole past 12 years of Neptune being in its own sign of Pisces and then having Saturn join it just brought up all of that, made the delusions so strong that as it came to the end, it's making us more aware of that it was a delusion and that now we need to, wake up and take responsibility.
I feel like
And action.
Neptune in Pisces is kind of the shadowy epitome of full faith, blind faith, and a false prophet.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was the whole Piscean age. I mean,
Back in the last time Neptune was in Pisces. Think about the last time Neptune was in Pisces. I don't know if it was necessarily me, but some of us like to think that we were, whatever famous people in a past life. Last time Neptune was in Pisces, I was sitting in my buddy's back 40 writing a book on the disillusionment that I had with all of conventional reality. And so he died in 1962 when Neptune hit 2 degrees of Aries. But Henry David Thoreau was quite the dreamer, but he was very, very, very interested on how to anchor that in on this planet, how to live simply, how to live deliberately and, quote, front only the essential facts of life and learn what it has to teach, and not, when I come to die, discover that I had not lived because living is so dear. Those words were written while Neptune was in Pisces. Now, after his death in 1962, now he was not, of course, the only American transcendentalist. Emerson preceded him, but then around this time, I mean, Civil War as well, but around this time, we were well into the American transcendentalist movement in literature, which is reflective of every single thing we're saying. Hey, how do we find a God within Neptune and Aries? I don't need a freaking priest to connect with God. Neptune, our ability to connect with that which we imagine, also called religion. Uh, Neptune, I can do that. Aries, I have the power to connect with whatever I consider spirit or heaven or God to be. And we had an incredibly rich amount of literature that percolated up from that time, 1861 to 1865. Who did we have? We can write quite a large list, and I see Eric's mind going, "Oh, I want to interject on this one. I got some things to say." I don't know, projection. So, if we are to consider the spiral nature of the evolution of these archetypes, then here we are, right? I mean, Thoreau died, just right at the time when Neptune entered Pisces. So we are right at that time where we have this whatever Walden Pond vision of what, humanity can be like. All we have to do is be responsible for our own stuff. And it's actually quite simple. Here we are again. We have another opportunity to use his words, simplify, be deliberate, front only the essential facts of life, etc. And from Thoreau's point of view, the engagement with nature, with the physical world, that was spirituality. If someone, what shall I learn of beings or beings of me? He said. Whoa, that's so huge. This deep interconnectedness that he had with the beans he was growing. Now, what would happen if every single one of us, again, not to keep repeating the same line, but every single one of us was responsible for our own salvation? What if every single one of us was responsible for sweeping in front of our own steps? What if every single one of us is responsible for living deliberately in front of the essential facts of life? You know what could happen? We could have a pretty amazing freaking world if we all took that kind of personal responsibility. Do we have another opportunity to do that? I'd like to think that we do.
Well said. I have a question on this graphic. It says 1773 Aries. I'm not sure that's right because in the Sibley chart, we've got Saturn in Libra in 1776. And so I'm not sure they were conjunct in Aries in 1773. But at any rate,
weren't, and they haven't been at the 0 degree point in maybe ever.
Yeah.
Well, they were close, but yeah, not zero. They were one.
That's not a big point. The point that I do want to make is circling back to I think I don't want to jump the gun about Pluto and Aquarius and Uranus and Gemini, but there is such a major echo reflection of the U.S. chart with Uranus return in Gemini and also probably, in my view, the biggest transit to the US chart we've ever had, which is Pluto coming to the South Node in Aquarius over these next couple of years. It gets pretty tight this year, within 1 degree. And then next year it's even tighter. It's even, it's exact. And so I wanted to, because of seeing this graphic made me think about, back then. And it's obvious, the point that I'm going to make. We see it all over the news, no kings, dethroning the Mad King idea that founded this country in 1776. Here we are with another iteration of that, with Pluto in Aquarius on the South Node. And so, my view with the Uranus return, with the Pluto, okay, just see the note here. It was in Virgo. Matthew was saying back then, not Aries, and that makes sense for that conjunction. Anyway, the point that I'm going to making is that so often when people look at really big astrology, which is the case this year. In fact, when I got into astrology in the late 90s, I had it on my radar since then, 2026. And also what's going on in my chart is pretty big too. At this time, I can't believe we've arrived. Here we are, 2026. So, but anyway, the point that I want to make is that when we have really big astrology, a lot of people dress it up in very cataclysmic ways. And my view is that when we have conjunctions, they are new beginnings. And the analogy I always give to people in my consultations is think about when you open a book and you arrive at a new chapter. When you first read the first few lines of the new chapter, it's just new plot developments. Things are not fully formed at conjunctions. There's a transition, yes, but it's a process to play out for 36 years with the Saturn-Neptune cycle that's going to create things over that time frame. It's never fully bloomed on, second 3. So to me, it's the open blank page. What do we want to write or create? What if we're the authors of our destiny? What is it that we want to write? So this isn't just relevant for the US. I think this is relevant for all of us, is to take inventory and say, okay, this is a time to author a new destiny. What do you want to do? Aries, what is your desire? But it's not going to be fully bloomed initially, but it's the seed.
Eric, you are completely right. 1773 was a conjunction of Saturn and Neptune in Virgo. It's my mistake.
Yeah, Matthew pointed that out. Yeah.
Okay, my mistake.
Yeah, that's fine.
Anyone else? Okay, moving right along here. Okay, I'm going to go back into history real quickly regarding the Saturn-Neptune conjunction on the 20th of February in Aries. So here we go. The 14th Amendment. And real quickly, let me get my notes here. Anyway, the main guiding documents of the United States were born of great conflict and division, suffering, and tragic loss of life. And what we're going to find is that after most of the American conflicts, starting with the Revolutionary War, there was a major Saturn-Neptune conjunction of some sort. Not Saturn-Neptune, well, yeah, there really was. If you look back at the previous slide, you can see that. And I'm sorry, this one should say Virgo. My mistake. So the Bill of Rights was ratified in 1791, and you can look back at the not long after the Revolutionary War, and comprised the first 10 amendments to the United States Constitution. The Insurrection Act of 1807 is a U.S. federal law that empowers the President of the United States to nationally deploy U.S. armed forces, such as the National Guard, in specific circumstances. This Insurrection Act, this was before the Civil War. The Insurrection Act was modified by President Lincoln in 1861, the year of the beginning of the American Civil War. And we all are aware that President Trump now wants to, there's scuttle that he wants to enact the Insurrection Act. He's trying to cause people to rise up so that he can declare martial law and possibly avoid midterm election. That's the scuttle. But anyway, many amendments were made to the Constitution after the Civil War. The same is true after World War II, with the Atlantic Charter created between Franklin D. Roosevelt and Winston Churchill. Not much later came the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. NATO's been in the news quite a bit lately, hasn't it? And the formation of the United Nations. So all of these decisions came after major conflict. So you can see that in our case now with the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Aries, how that action is really being implemented, but it's been repeated also in the past about every 36 years. We're all trying to keep the peace. Well, the reason for the declarations and the documents and the governmental reform are all in the attempt to keep the peace and avoid future wars or autocracies if we can do that. The 14th Amendment especially is relevant to right now if you consider the ICE goons that are chasing citizens in the streets. The 14th Amendment, ratified in 1868 after the Civil War, is pivotal for civil rights, granting citizenship to all born or naturalized in the U.S., including formerly enslaved people, and guaranteeing all citizens equal protection of the laws and due process. So that came about after the Civil War. And we need to remember it, so that's why I showed it. Let me try to get my cursor, get my page. Here we go.
Marty, I'm sorry. What is it that you're tying in astrologically on the 14th Amendment?
I'm showing that in 1868, after the Civil War, when there was actually a time after around this conjunction in Taurus.
That conjunction. Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I wish I had put them both on the same page. So here's the Civil War start in April 13th of 1861, and this is something that Tara pointed out to us in a future, or in a later previous discussion, is that Neptune did ingress to 0 degrees Aries on the first day of the Civil War. Here we are in 2025, March 30th of 2025, and Neptune ingressed to Aries in this chart as well. So that was just recently last year. Saturn conjunct Neptune, this is the big one. So here we have Saturn conjunct Neptune, what we astrologically say is happening on, oh no, I'm sorry, this is 1882, my mistake, I should have read my own script here. But this is after the Civil War. The Civil War ended in 1861, 1868, I think it was 1865. But after 1865, for about 20 years or so, including to modern times, or around 1960 when the Civil Rights Movement started, there was a Reconstruction period right after the Civil War where interlopers came in trying to make money, carpetbaggers, or skirmishes, discrimination, great hostilities, and the Jim Crow era that lasted until about the mid-1960s, when the Civil Rights Movement began. So a lot is happening after these American conflicts. And I know that I'm not talking about the world, but I'm just talking about America to, save time and to try to be concise and direct. Many new government laws enacted and amendments added to our Constitution in the attempt to keep the peace and treat people equally, despite the ravage and destruction of the South. Great economic disparity existed before even the North could regain again its footing. Some people would say if we're in a Neptune-Saturn conjunction in Aries now, have we seen a war? No, thank God we haven't seen a war, and we don't want to. But have we been in conflict? Yes. Inherited familial wealth and prejudice still ruled after the Civil War and owned the arable land, the farmable land in the South. And the politics and most all commerce were disrupted, but to the point that they had to be rebuilt and new institutions and systems put into place. Can anybody say tariffs affecting the economy? Laws were quickly set forth from the North to allow freed workers to share crop, but this was most difficult in the South due to societal customs and entrenched discrimination. We also see a lot of this mirrored in the Ukrainian conflict today. So this was 1882. Okay, here we are. This is a big one. February 20th, 26th, Neptune conjunct Saturn, 0 degrees Aries, right here. And this is when we're basically observing it. And please remember, Jeffrey Green said, please remember that the natural expression of Neptune is balsamic, dissolving karma and karmic ties. What we have here is actually an opportunity, in my opinion, I have to keep the cursor going or I lose it, in my opinion, to heal the past. Heal the past. Review it, remember it, honor it, regard it, and heal the past, and bless those that came before us, especially, I'm going to say especially during Civil War times, because we so much mirror those times right now with all the division and the disruption and the obliteration of truths, basic truths. Neptune will leave about a 15-year transit through Pisces. Neptune takes place within normally about 13 to 14 years, but in this case it's a 15-year transit through Pisces. Neptune only conjuncts Saturn once every 36 plus years. The ruler of the North Node that will be changing in July. Current planetary rulers of the nodal axis, Mercury, Mercury, the ruler of Virgo, and Neptune, the ruler of Pisces, will then change to Aquarius, Leo, nodal axis. Here's your historic conjunctions. And I want to point out that those who were born between 1951 and 53, that this Neptune and Saturn conjunction in Aries is going to be in opposition to their natal Saturn-Neptune conjunction. That includes myself. And it's going to square those born between 1987 and 89 that have Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Capricorn. And that upcoming, let me go back here a moment. Oh, I'm sorry. For those born between 51 and 53, this current conjunction will be in opposition to their Saturn-Neptune in Libra. And it's going to square those born between 1987 and 89 with Saturn conjunction in Capricorn. So those are going to be really affecting those people, and it's something to look out for. If you were born during those times, it's something to consider, very prominently consider. So there's lots of Aries ingression and Mars transit energy going on now. It can have to do with the military, the paramilitary, state and federal forces, either causing as a result of provocation or resistance, or causing organized resistance or increased political activism. Aries, Mars, first house is always about new beginnings, new evolutionary cycles. Neptune will be in Aries for about 13 years, Saturn for about 2, and Saturn will soon overtake Neptune to begin a brand new Saturn in Aries cycle, with the influence of not only culminating a Pisces transit, but a Neptune and Pisces transit. And remember that Jeffrey Green said that this is an opportunity during any Neptune Pisces to dissolve things of the past. And then we had a social media post by Mark Kelly, and I think her name is Elise Slotkin, two United States senators in early January 2026, reminding soldiers that it's okay to disobey illegal orders.
Hey, Marty, I want
Yes.
to point out one thing because it just exemplifies everything that you're saying, is in the around healing, right? Whenever you look at the Civil War chart, Mercury is at 25 Pisces, and on the lunar eclipse, the north node of Mercury is at 25 Pisces, and the solar eclipse, and then on the lunar eclipse, Venus, the lower octave of Neptune, which is corresponding to Pisces, is at 26 Pisces. So that Mercury is there. So we're having this, again, it's like the solution is birthed from the problem. It's contained within those questions that we ask, right? Very mercurial. And that it's where we can dissolve the past by also taking the knowledge and the wisdom and applying it to create that solution in the here and now. Just FYI, continue going, because I don't want to, you're on a roll, and I just wanted to point that out.
I'm done.
Okay. Well, I thought that it was fascinating.
Someone
We're
else.
revisiting the unresolved issues from the Civil War, from the American Revolution.
Absolutely.
It's just cyclically, you reach a point of resolution for now in any given era, and there it is. The transits either replicate or they're angled.
Well, and if you think about America, its chart is really rooted. We've talked about this before. I feel like, well, not I feel, I know. It's really this dynamic of inclusive versus exclusive, right? And the back and forth, the teetering. And this is where we can really look at the evolutionary journey of a collective. Whenever America, before it became America, it was the Puritans moving over because they wanted religious freedom. They wanted to break free, right? They wanted to individuate and think for themselves. And then there was a stagnation and a fixed energy within those beliefs. And then we eventually had the Revolutionary War that helped us to, evolve in that way and establish something. And then we had this dynamic of, so again, we're seeing America, Puritans moved over, they felt excluded, they felt isolated, so they banded together. The group did, the community did, in order to liberate from the old structure. And then we have the
While
revolutionary.
ostracizing anybody who didn't follow their rigid fundamentalist
1,000%.
beliefs and the witch hunts and all of that.
Yes, as I've talked about this, like literally ad nauseum. So like, then we have the Revolutionary War, which it's the same dynamic. And then this evolves and we have the Civil War, right? And so we have these political leadership roles, people who come in, who exemplify the extremes of one wanting to go back, the moon in Aquarius in America's chart, the social dinosaurs, and then the other ones who are wanting to break free and to be rooted in more natural, universal, timeless principles of giving, sharing, inclusion, unity and diversity. So Abraham Lincoln, what did he want to do? He at first wanted to keep the Union together. That was everything for him. And then he got to the task, and he even had, Black men fight as a way to say, if you can fight for your freedom too, like you can be, it was an act of inclusion, right? During the Civil War, because he could have hidden that, okay? And he didn't. He wanted them to feel like they were a part of their own liberation, their own freedom, all right? So there's these themes that come back into play. And now what we're having again, as Uranus is about to come into Gemini, we've got Neptune back in Aries when, these things have transpired in the past. I think one thing that we haven't really talked about whenever it comes to like post antebellum, Neptune was in Aries and there was the spiritualism movement. And so there was a lot of lessons around this new type of spirituality that was really birthed from all of the crisis and the death and the trauma that happened. And so people were wanting to connect with the unseen, their loved ones who had passed away. And so we had people who on one level who were really trying to be, that's the spirit, we had the spiritual warriors come in. We also had people who did have capacities come in. This is the time, like all over the world, we saw like Yogananda and, these people really start to come out of what, to us it appeared hiding, right? But it wasn't. And then We we also saw people who totally took advantage of people's vulnerabilities for their own, for their own, what is it? What's the word I'm looking for? Their own, oh gosh, like egoic needs, not thinking about how that could harm others. So there's also, we're going to see, I feel, if we look at the cycles with the Neptune and Aries, of where there needs to be an immense amount of discernment, right? Um, around these kind of principles. Are people learning from the past crises? Are people trying to take advantage? Can you sharpen your discernment, your spiritual discernment? You know, so yeah, I just find all of this fascinating.
It is, Jordan. I think you're really getting into a whole series of historical layers and psychological layers and sociological. And I find myself reflecting as I'm listening about one of the most egregious abuses of power and manipulation of power is to claim that you are showing up in the interest of the people when in fact you are using said power, said achieved power, to oppress any number of other groups of people, which is effectively what the Puritans did. It's effectively what our current administration is doing. And that is certainly going on, not just in the US, but in multiple European countries. It's going on in Latin America. It's going on in China. It's going on with Taiwan, and so on and so forth. Just bringing it back to the US, so much of Trump's rhetoric is about is his claims to free people of the burden of the big bad whomever. But
Yeah.
intrinsic in that is the oppression of whomever else. And of course, the targeted groups change with the generations, though historically, in any number of recent thousands of years, the power structure has always been the white Christian male, heterosexual. And so forth. But we're revisiting that. So much of this that we're revisiting in this country is about race
Yes. Yes, it
and
is.
and gender, of course. But this is all unresolved material. The Civil War may have ended slavery, at least as slave in the structure that slavery existed for 400 years prior. But it certainly didn't end discrimination and oppression of people who have darker skin.
No, and
Sense of superiority.
we also
Right.
need to think about how, after the Civil War, people were pissed off. And so the Jim Crow laws that came.
Yes.
And if we think about how everything really becomes tied together, and especially with Uranus moving back into Gemini, how this can really, especially with Pluto being ruled by it, how this creates seed thoughts, right? And whenever the people don't talk about this, but the Nuremberg laws were based off of Jim Crow laws. And so that's why it's important for us to really objectify what it is that we're doing and cultivate a deeper capacity to discern, because it's teaching the lesson even within that. Jim Crow laws were the basis of Nuremberg laws, which created, they were the apex of what? World War II, right? And how it really exemplifies that we are all connected, and our choices are not just American choices, that they ripple out just like the effects of other countries and their choices ripple into us, right? And that is the crisis at hand here, in my opinion, is that people don't want to acknowledge this. And I would have to say, especially in America, you know, because
Yes.
Americans, if you've traveled the world, you know, we're kind of fucking full of ourselves. Like,
And we're also really hung up on race
yes,
in ways that
absolutely.
many
Well,
other
and it
first world
started
countries
with
are not.
indigenous people.
Yes.
And if you really think about how, um, you know, even we could learn a lot from indigenous people. I say that being indigenous, which I find ironic, but it is indigenous people didn't, except for the five civilized tribes, who ended up having their own slaves. People don't talk about that. That's another day of a historical lesson. But they there was always and if we're looking at what is going on in America right now, there are tribal members who have been taken by ICE right now, even though they are US citizens, and people don't know where they are. Um, their chief is trying to get a hold of them. It's being denied. And guess what? It's people of color have always banded together. Indigenous people, Andrew Jackson, same energies of what's going on right now. He really hated, not only indigenous people, but black people. And it was because they understand that there was unity in their diversity. And they banded together because they understood each other. They understood what it was like to be discriminated. We see this even whenever the Puritans came. So it's just this, it is these cycles that are repeating over and over again. And there is a call to liberate from all of this because our choices we make, they infiltrate into other areas.
The promise that was made by Lincoln to former African slaves in the North, fight for your freedom, those hopes were decimated by the birth of the Jim Crow laws, by the lynchings in the South that gave birth to the Ku Klux Klan. So all of those former African former slaves who fought for freedom in many ways didn't really get it. That was also repeated through the First World War, the Second World War, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, in terms of discrimination, in terms of inability to get VA loans, in terms of inability to get mortgages, in terms of inability to get jobs, and equal opportunity. And I'm going back to the promise of Pisces,
Yes.
the hope, the dream, the fantasy of Pisces, or even the shadow expression of Aquarius. And Pluto is still early in Aquarius. The depths and the shadow of that could be, oh, sure, come work together, and this will be for the benefit of everybody. Or I'm working for you for the benefit of all of you, but it's really not. It's really not. Trump has gained following by a growing number of people of color. He's not helping in any way, shape, or form on a policy level, but it's a false hope. I wonder if perhaps that's part of the lesson in Pluto and Aquarius, getting to really understand, hey, what do you really mean by the power of the collective? Who's comprised in the collective? Who's the collective is it comprised of? And then also with Uranus ingressing into Gemini, perhaps, and this is just a hopeful interpretation, perhaps Uranus in Gemini will offer a more quick-witted, clear, seeing through all the BS. I'm thinking about the capacity that Uranus has to like channel incredible, brilliant information in the form of Gemini, you know, like in the Tarot, the archetype of the swords, really a very cutting, very clear, very precise, cut the bullshit. What's this really about? What is this information? what's substantiated by the data points here. So maybe there's a raising of the vibration of our collective intelligence that this air energy can offer.
Hopefully, that's the high end, and that's what I'm hoping for.
We can hope.
And but also, the shadow of Uranus and Gemini, like any astrological signature, it can scare the daylights out of you. And, overwhelm, confusion, too much information, people being overstimulated,
Abuse of the internet,
all
and
types of stuff.
dissemination of bad
All
information.
types of stuff. But I will say, since I got into astrology in the 90s, what transits have I been looking forward to the most? And Pluto and Aquarius trine Uranus and Gemini is pretty high on my list. However, I want to say one thing about Pluto in Aquarius. Pluto brings up the psychology, the fear, the darkness, or whatever it touches. And right now, we are seeing the fear of change, Aquarius, the fear of the new world that's inevitable. For many people, the fear of demographic changes in this country, to pick up on some of the racial things that have been talked about, which is inevitable. I don't know the actual statistic, but I hear that by the time of 2050, more people will be speaking Spanish than English in this country. I think that might be the statistic that people are saying, or things of that nature, the fear of all of this. And so here comes Uranus in Gemini, trine Pluto and Aquarius. And I'm hopeful that the new information, seeing things from a more learned perspective, advancing intellectually, and hopefully there's going to be growth in this direction so we can allay some of that fear that I see very widespread. And I think it's the underpinnings of a lot of what is happening out there in the world right now is stemming from a lot of fear of change. So to me, that is the purpose, the bright side of Uranus trine Pluto in air signs, is for us to learn how to understand and see the world anew and each other without so much fear. But I don't think that trines make everything better, as I don't think that the type of aspect can forecast if things are going to go well or not. That's up to us and our co-creative management.
There can be complacency in a trine.
There certainly can be, and it doesn't guarantee anything going smoothly, in my view. And, the analogy that I like is if you have a crystal clear phone line between you and somebody else, that doesn't guarantee you're going to have a really helpful conversation. It means that the line is open for you to do that. Whether or not you show up is up to you. So we do need to have the dialogue. Gemini, Uranus and Gemini, we need to listen to each other. We need to have more of the ability to see each other, to work through our psychological fear of change. I think that's what this astrology is about. And then with the Saturn-Neptune, it is connected in. It's making that cool sextile to both wings of it. So we have this really cool astrology, this triangle being formed. And so in the middle of it is the Saturn-Neptune responsibility of the individual to bridge those things, the communication and the learning, with working through psychological hangups or fears or whatever you want to call it around change. So I think that's what it's about. Whether or not we do it well or not, it's up to us. I'm trying to get my optimism back after recent events.
So we are approaching, well, we're past 90 minutes. And Marty, where are you on your slides?
About halfway through.
Oh, you are? Okay. So we may have to postpone some of them till the next time.
Yeah.
Ryan has asked to share his screen. Did you?
Sure. Yeah, thank you for that. That was more of a Saturn-Neptune comment. I was about to make a Pluto-Uranus comment. Let me see if I can tie them together.
Do you want me to stop
Okay.
share?
Sure, please.
Sure, yeah, that's fine. Does everybody remember, or hopefully you've seen the movie Dead Poet Society?
Sure.
Dead Poet Society. Okay, so remember the scene. Robin Williams. I'm not going to do it right here, but he stands on his desk and encourages everyone else, hey, if you want to, just when you think you know something, just when you think you got it all figured out, and you stand on your desk, you have a completely different perspective of everything. I would love to caricature the Pluto-Uranus trine as an opportunity for us to stand on our desks and get a completely different perspective of every single, oh, that's the tie-in, of every single thing that exists in our culture, in our society, in our economics, in our entire civilization. How and why could I make such a bodacious claim? According to my current research, which is completely up for review, the closest that I can get for an exact conjunction of Saturn and Neptune at the Aries point is way back in 4362 BC. Any of you remember that? That's the birth of city-states. That's when, the ancient Sumerians, the beginning of the kingdoms of ancient Egypt. We can call that, for some of us, or from some point of view, one point of view, we could call this time synonymous or resonant with Saturn-Neptune at the Aries point, the birth of freaking civilization. We started coming out of the forest and started gathering together, welcoming the birth of the city-states. Ancient Sumer was somewhere around 4000 BC. So I'm gonna make again, bodacious statement. We have been existing in whatever conventional civilization that we currently call modern civilization. We've been living in some form of this for, what are we looking at, 6,000 years? We came out of the forests, got together in our city-states, and now here we are, the culmination of that. How are we doing? How's civilization going? So from, again, and I'm going to use the word again, it's a great word, bodacious point of view, we're looking at the potential or the possibility of using Eric's reference, page 1, of what could be, maybe, just maybe, if we stand on our desk and get a correct perspective, or at least a different perspective, we could be at the beginning of a whole nother, not just cycle in politics, not just what do we do about race from the 1800s, and not just going back every 36 or 37 years or so, but if we go back to the beginning of freaking modern civilization, the beginning of where we started history, and maybe we're at another juncture, maybe we're at another, what's the next page? The information of that next page of what the next iteration of whatever we consider civilization to be, maybe, just maybe, we're about to open the first pages of what that next iteration of human civilization can be. Why? Because how are we doing with this one? And so I reckon that some changes need to be made, We can stand on our desks this summer and say, oh, gee, yeah, look at that. Oh, gosh. Oh, geez, let's add a little Eye of Newt over here. And, oh, some puppy dog tails over here and a little magic. And poof, we can create something that actually, I don't know, works mo better, or at least a little better. Because this current one has culminated in where we are now. And I'm not, there's some great things about it, but some things I'm not too happy with, and I think we can do a lot better. I don't know. What do you think?
Well said, Ryan. And it's difficult in the present moment because we have no idea what is going to develop, but we do see a big shift that is occurring. And I'm no expert on AI, but from the limited that I do know about it and other things out there, is probably we're going to look at this time frame as a shift to Aquarius, the advanced technological kind of orientation on this planet, which is different than the more industrial age or agriculture age or what have you, where it is much more based on metaphysical Aquarian and intellectual interconnectedness. Even the internet, historians will just look at this general time frame. And we have other things. Everyone remember 2012 and the so-called end of the Mayan calendar. Another indication that this general time frame, not specifying one day, but just this general time frame, is a shift of ages. So my view is that it's gradual moving into the so-called age of Aquarius. It doesn't happen overnight. Someone said there is no kumbaya moment when we wake up and everything's enlightened around us. It's not going to happen. But we're going to look at history and see that there's an acceleration probably around this time. I know in my life, I was born in 1971, and I have conversations all the time with people that when I was a kid in the 70s, and there's people older than me, obviously, on this panel, it was a completely different rhythm of life than we have now in many ways. There already has been a very rapid acceleration that we've all witnessed, actually.
Yeah. We had big wheels, man.
I like to tell people I don't look that old, but I graduated college and there was no internet, there was no email, no one carried any mobile devices when I graduated college in 1993.
And it's going to keep accelerating at an exponential rate. And this period of time is, I think, pivotal time when everything is about to advance very rapidly, more so than it has over the last 100 years.
Very likely.
I'd concur. It was real quick pop culture anecdote. It was Q in Star Trek Next Generation who said to Commander Riker, "You humans are such an interesting species. You're capable of so much and so much change, but into what and how? That is the question." So I think we're about there, huh?
Yes, that's where we're at.
Good place to leave it, huh?
Yeah, so there is so much going on this year that we will have to continue discussing the changes at the next panel.
Yeah,
this was my first
one.
time attending this particular group, and I just want to thank everybody. I really enjoyed hearing everyone's perspectives.
Well, thank you, Matthew.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. We do this on a ongoing basis, and we have different people participating different times, and if we have another one scheduled, Robin, already, because we have
I haven't chosen the date yet. There's going to be one in February.
Okay.
Is it always on a Wednesday?
No. It's all different.
Usually it'll be Tuesday through Thursday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, but it can vary.
And the time varies because we have people from all over the world that want to
Right.
participate.
Yeah, so the
And
next one is going to be earlier.
The Facebook group name is, I know it's the Jeffrey
I'll
Wolf
add
Green.
you to the list.
Do you mind?
Of,
thank you so much.
to people who who may want to participate in the discussion.
Thank you. I'm on so many different Facebook groups, and including astrology groups. I lose track of which is what.
Okay. So until next time, which will be in the next 2 or 3 weeks, and we will continue discussing the changes of 2026.
Thank you,
you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.